This subject of linear thinking made a clear statement in the beginning that fully agree that it's dead boring, and I actually never really identified with that kind of, not opposing that kind of logic, but it's just that I really can't identify or tune in with that kind of thinking, that kind of cognition. So having that said, I'd like to dive head first once again into this subject. To big part because of this boring nature of it, and you might perhaps make some relevant comparisons, because let's compare this to, say, music. In some ways might be considered the most free and abstract of all art forms, and well, in some ways it actually is. Nevertheless, imagine a symphonic situation with 100 musicians, maybe 30 violins, violins, and horns and percussions, and the whole damned army of silly people. It's not all the way creative, expressive, free, and emotional, right? Just as one simple example, they actually need to be tuned into each other, a tonal synchronization is not the proper word, but just say that they, like said, they must be tuned to each other, and there are actually some very clear objective reference points, like this so-called normal A, 440 fluctuations, swings per, I'm not completely sure if it's per minute or per second, and that's not anything that any of these musicians need to know, because the only thing that matters is agreeing upon this thing, which is arbitrarily labeled as an A, because there is no A's in the nature, there are just fluctuations. read me, and there is an agreement. Let's call this A, and it has changed over times, but 440 is what we agreed upon, and that's no. You won't get away with compromising in that situations. You can't come saying that, yeah, I get your point, but I want my freedom of personal expressions, and I really like 442 much better. No, this A is 440, and if you tune your A into 442, this will not be in tune with the rest. And to be exact, I might mention to that tuning slight bit too high probably actually would make your specific violin sound as the only one playing right, because it stands out, and it becomes so yeah, it's sharper and will penetrate this wall of sound. For that reason, I think this is a very relevant metaphor. And you might also imagine someone who does not like to participate. Let's say it's the virtuoso, the first violinist in this orchestra. Doesn't matter, because she's bound to obey by the same rules as the rest of the crew. She might say that you should listen. I happen to be the star in this collective, so I really need to to tune my instrument a slight bit sharp. Never in life you'd get away with that, no matter how much star you might be. Because there's a composer who has decided, when he composed this, about what specific tunes will be included, what tones will be included in this creation. And we have this conductor, and actually he is the boss, not this violin star. And you might also imagine her becoming offended when the entire crew starts. I really believe that was an actual A, as the tone in old telephones. You might check it if you like. I have no absolute hearing. It's just that particular one that I'm pretty much sure it might be an actual A. Anyway, and she starts arguing. Why on earth must we be playing this A? because the whole symphony is tuned into, say, E flat, which is a musical key that's the only relevant part, and it does not, the scale does not include the specific tone A. So she might argue, why are we playing this normal A? Why are we tuning against normal A? Because there will be none in this whole composition. Nevertheless, it is a reference point, and as soon as we can agree upon this normal A, all the other tones theoretically will also become right as soon as you get them right on your fingerboard, which I'm afraid you won't. What I'm trying to say is that this is not a matter of creativity, freedom of expression, express whatever you want, but there are actual boundaries, some things that, some coordinates that is useless arguing about, because they are at least relatively objective, even if not written in stone, because like I mentioned, the definition of normal A has actually changed. The point is that even if it's changed, this is still a common reference point. And if you have an old pipe organ, which is tuned to the old definition of A, you will need a way to figure this out when tuning in with other instruments. You might have it retuned, that's not at all impossible. Same thing with old accordions. You don't tune those yourself, but you can have a accordion repairer intonating it. Or like those pipe organs. Neil Young actually tours with one of those old monsters, and his solution to this is that everyone tune their instrument towards this particular instrument to get it right, so that they will not be sharp against this instrument. However, this creates other problems, because some may know he is a harmonica player. He have them in that kind of stand like Dylan and some others, and those are unfortunately tuned to the normal modern A, which means that everything will be in tune except for his harps, and they will always be somewhat sharp compared to everything else. On record, this is no problem. There's always this possibility of pitching. You can, even with old stuff, you could run the tape a slight bit faster and also raise the pitch. And get in tune with the harp. A bit more troublesome when playing live in real time. This is not just well, it's very much just bubbling of silly thoughts, but I don't have this really linear way of reasoning, even when I'm speaking about linear reasoning. So, but I promise I'll do my best to narrow things down and get to the point. But I can't do this just like that.